It starts before you even step on the ship. You're scrolling through your cruise options and suddenly you see it. The drink package. Unlimited cocktails, wine, beer, sodas, specialty coffee, all bundled into one daily price. And immediately, your brain does the math for you. $12 for a cocktail, maybe 15. 2 drinks at lunch, a couple by the pool, wine at dinner. It adds up fast. So when you see a package that promises everything for a flat rate, it doesn't just feel convenient. It feels smart, controlled. Almost like you found a way to beat the system before your vacation even begins. And that's exactly where the trap is set. Because what the cruise line is really selling isn't unlimited drinks. It's a different way of thinking about money. A system where you stop evaluating each decision and start justifying all of them. Once you buy it, something subtle shifts. You're no longer choosing what you actually want. You're trying to prove that what you already paid was worth it. And that's when small decisions start stacking up, in ways you don't notice until the very end. But the first real mistake doesn't happen when you buy the package. It happens the moment you step on board. Mistake 1. The first day trap that locks you in. You finally step onto the ship, and everything feels like the start of something exciting. Music is playing, staff are smiling, and within minutes, someone is offering you your first drink. And this is where it begins. Because once you have the drink package, that first drink doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like something you should take. After all, you already paid for it. So you order one. Then maybe another while you're exploring. Something at lunch. Something sweet in the afternoon. It feels effortless. It feels like you're getting value. But here's what most people don't realize. The first day of a cruise is one of the worst days to use a drink package. You're busy boarding, waiting for luggage, attending safety drills, figuring out the ship layout. You're not actually relaxing and drinking consistently. Most people never come close to drinking enough on that first day to match what they paid for. And yet, you've already committed to paying for every day of the cruise. This is the real mistake. Because your brain doesn't register that loss. Instead, it creates a quiet promise. I'll make up for it tomorrow. That single thought is what locks you into the cycle. From that point on, you're no longer evaluating whether the package was worth it. You're trying to recover value that's already gone. And that changes every decision you make for the rest of the trip. A smarter approach, one that experienced cruisers quietly use, is to delay commitment. Start by paying per drink on the first day. Watch your real behavior, not your imagined one. See how often you actually order when you're not trying to justify anything. Because once the package is active, you stop learning about your habits. You start defending your purchase. Mistake 2. The break-even math that quietly falls apart. By the second day, something interesting starts happening in your head. You begin doing the math. You look at your drink, maybe a $13 cocktail, and you start counting. If I have 6 or 7 today, I'm already ahead. It feels logical. It feels controlled, like you've turned your decision into a strategy. And for a moment, it feels like you're winning. But that calculation only works in a perfect version of your cruise. That doesn't exist. Because real cruise days are uneven. One morning you wake up early for a shore excursion and barely drink anything. Another day you feel tired, maybe a little dehydrated, and you slow down. Some afternoons you're busy exploring the ship. Some evenings you just want dinner and rest. That consistent 6 to 8 drinks per day you imagined before the trip quietly breaks down in real life. And here's the part that almost nobody accounts for. The package doesn't adjust. You pay the same full price on your lowest consumption day as you do on your highest. One quiet day doesn't just reduce your value, It can completely erase the savings from another day. So even if you have one day where you drink a lot and feel like you're getting ahead, it often gets canceled out by 2 normal days where you're not even close. But your brain doesn't track it that way. It remembers the one day that felt like a win. It forgets the other days that quietly pulled you behind. That's the illusion. And once you believe you're close to breaking even, something shifts inside you. You stop asking, "Do I want this drink?" And you start asking, "Do I need this to make it worth it?" That's when the decision stops being about enjoyment and starts becoming a quiet pressure you carry for the rest of the cruise. Mistake 3, the "I already paid" trap that starts controlling you. Sometime around the middle of the cruise, the excitement fades just enough for something else to take over. It's subtle at first. You're sitting by the pool, maybe not even thinking about a drink, but then a thought appears. "I should probably get one. I already paid for it." So you order, not because you really want it, just because it feels like the right move. And that's the moment the package stops being a benefit and starts controlling your behavior. This is what psychologists call the sunk cost effect. Once you've paid for something up front, your brain becomes obsessed with not wasting it. Even if using it more doesn't actually benefit you, it still feels better than letting it go unused. So you drink more than you normally would. You order things you wouldn't usually choose. You say yes when you would have said no. Not because it improves your experience, but because it reduces the uncomfortable feeling of losing value. And the cruise line understands this perfectly. They don't need you to drink a lot every day. They just need you to feel like you should. That quiet pressure builds. You start pacing your day around drinks. You think about when your next one should be. You hesitate to skip, even when you're tired or just not in the mood. And ironically, the more you try to use the package, the less relaxed your vacation becomes. A better approach, one that experienced travelers follow, is to separate value from pressure. Before you order anything, pause and ask a simple question. Would I still want this if I hadn't already paid? If the answer is no, that's your signal to skip it. Because the goal of your cruise isn't to maximize consumption. It's to actually enjoy your time. Mistake 4. The hidden limits that still make you pay. By now, you feel like you understand the system. You've adjusted your expectations. You've accepted the daily cost. You've even started to pace yourself so the package makes sense. And that's exactly when the next surprise shows up. It usually happens in a completely normal moment. You order a drink, something slightly nicer this time. Maybe a premium cocktail, a top-shelf spirit, or a specialty item you've been wanting to try. You hand over your card without thinking, because in your mind, everything is already covered. Then, later, you check your account, and there's a charge. At first, it doesn't make sense. You bought the package. That was the whole point. But what most people don't realize is that these packages are filled with small, quiet limits that only show up after you've already committed. There's often a price cap per drink. Go over it, and you pay the difference. Some items aren't included at all. Certain locations on board have exceptions, and in some cases, even the included drinks can trigger additional service charges, depending on how and where you order. None of this feels obvious when you're buying the package. It only becomes real when you see unexpected charges stacking up in the background. And here's the uncomfortable truth. At that point, you're not going to change your behavior. You've already paid for the package, so you keep ordering the same way, even though now you're paying on top of what you already spent. That's how the system quietly wins twice. A smarter move is to set a clear boundary before you start. Know the price cap. Know what's included and what isn't. And if a drink goes beyond that limit, Make a conscious decision instead of an automatic one. Because the danger isn't just paying once, it's paying twice without even realizing it. Mistake 5. The couple rule that quietly doubles your cost. This is the moment where a good deal suddenly becomes very expensive, and most people don't notice it until they've already committed. You're traveling with someone, a partner, a spouse, a friend. One of you enjoys drinks. The other, not so much. Maybe they'll have one occasionally, maybe none at all. So naturally, you think, I'll just get the drink package for myself. But that's not how it works. On many cruise lines, if one adult in a cabin buys the alcoholic drink package, the other adult is required to buy it too. It's not presented as a warning. It's often buried in the fine print, or only becomes clear when you try to check out. And suddenly, the numbers change. What felt like a reasonable daily cost is now doubled. And here's where the real damage happens. Even if the second person barely drinks, the system doesn't adjust. You're still paying full price for both. That means the total amount you need to break even isn't just high, it's almost unrealistic. So what happens next? The person who doesn't normally drink starts drinking more, just to justify the cost. The person who already drinks feels even more pressure to make it worth it. And now both people are caught in the same cycle. More drinks, more pressure, less actual enjoyment. And the cruise line wins again. Because what started as one decision has now locked two people into the same spending pattern. A smarter approach is to stop thinking of the package as a shared deal. Treat each person separately. If one of you doesn't naturally drink enough to justify it, that's your answer right there, even if the system tries to push you otherwise. Because sometimes the most expensive mistake is trying to make a deal work for two people when it barely works for one. Mistake 6. The just one more loop that expands your spending. At this point, most people believe they've already seen the worst of it. You understand the math. You've noticed the pressure. You've adjusted your expectations. But this is where the pattern quietly changes. Because once you've had the package for a few days, something subtle happens to your decision-making. The hesitation disappears. That small pause you used to have before spending money, it's gone. And that's when the just one more loop begins. It doesn't feel like overspending. It feels like harmless additions. A better coffee instead of the basic one. A slightly upgraded cocktail. A drink before dinner, and then another during. Something sweet later in the evening, just because you're walking past the bar anyway. Each decision feels small. Each one feels justified. And because you're not paying directly in that moment, your brain doesn't register it as spending. It registers it as continuation. Just one more. Just one more. Just one more. But here's what most people never notice. Not everything inside that loop is fully covered. Some upgrades go beyond the package limit. Some specialty items aren't included. Some locations or brands trigger extra charges. And even when the additional cost is small, it doesn't feel real in the moment. So you don't stop. That's how the total quietly grows. Not from one big mistake, but from a series of tiny, frictionless decisions that stack together. And by the time you see the final number, it doesn't feel connected to any single choice you made. It just feels like it appeared. A smarter way to break this loop is to reintroduce friction. Set a simple rule for yourself before the trip begins. For example, limit yourself to certain types of drinks that you know are fully covered. Or pause before every order and ask if you would still want it without the package. Because once just one more becomes automatic, that's when your control disappears completely. Mistake 7. The final bill moment that changes everything. It doesn't hit you during the trip. Not when you're ordering drinks, not when you're walking past the bar, not even when you occasionally notice a small charge and ignore it. It hits you at the very end. The night before you leave, or the morning you're about to disembark, you open your account. Maybe just out of curiosity. Maybe because you want to make sure everything looks right. And that's when the number becomes real. Not in pieces, not one drink at a time. All at once. You see the total for the package across every day of your cruise. You see the extra charges that slipped in without you noticing, the upgrades, the drinks that went slightly over the limit, the small additions that didn't feel like spending at the time. And suddenly, the story you told yourself earlier in the trip doesn't feel so convincing anymore. Because when you look at the full amount, one question starts to surface. Did I actually get value? Or did I just convince myself that I did? That's the moment most people replay their entire trip in their head. They remember the days they didn't drink much, the times they ordered something just to use the package, the moments they didn't even want a drink, but got one anyway. And they realized something uncomfortable. The package didn't save them money. It changed how they spent it. And once you see that clearly, it's hard to ignore. Because the real cost wasn't just the number on the bill. It was every small decision that stopped being a choice. By now, you've seen how the trap works. Not through one big mistake, but through a series of small shifts in how you think, how you justify, and how you decide. So the real question isn't whether the drink package is good or bad. It's whether it actually matches how you behave. And this is where experienced cruisers quietly do things differently. Before they ever buy a package, they run a simple test in their head, not based on what they could drink, but what they consistently will drink across an entire trip. Not the best day, not the party night, the average day. Then they build in reality, port days where they'll be off the ship, mornings where they don't drink, evenings where they just want to relax. Once you factor those in, the number of drinks needed to truly break even becomes much higher than it first appears. And here's a small insider move that most people never think to use. When you're unsure, start without the package. Pay per drink for the first day or two. Watch your actual behavior, not your assumptions. If you find yourself naturally ordering enough to justify the cost, then you can upgrade. But if you don't, you've just saved yourself from committing to something you didn't need. There's also a simple phrase experienced cruisers use when they're on the fence. I'll decide after I see how I actually drink on the ship. That one sentence removes pressure. It gives you control back. Because the goal isn't to maximize what you consume. It's to make sure every decision still feels like a choice. At the start of your cruise, the drink package feels like freedom. By the end, for many people, it feels like something they had to keep up with. And that's the real shift you need to understand. This isn't just about drinks. It's about how easily your decisions can be shaped when the cost is hidden up front, when the system removes friction, and when your brain starts chasing value instead of asking what you actually want. The smartest cruisers aren't the ones who get the most out of the package. They're the ones who stay aware of how they're being influenced. So, before your next cruise, ask yourself something simple. Are you choosing this because it fits you, or because it feels like you should? Because that one question can save you more money than any deal ever will. And if you've ever come back from a cruise and felt like you spent more than you expected, I want to hear it. What surprised you the most? Subscribe if you want to avoid the kind of mistakes most people only realize after it's too late. And in the next video, I'm going to show you the hidden cruise charges that don't look expensive at first, but quietly drain your money every single day.